Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast. BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Well, today is November 6th, and it is Election Day. I thought about doing something a little bit more political, but this election hasn't been as eventful as we thought it would be. So let's go back to one of the things that we have been discussing recently on this channel. That would be the Flat Earth Theory. Now, I've done a couple uploads about this. I would say that it's not the most popular subject for you guys, but what I would say is that somebody called me out last time and saying that I didn't really do some very thorough research, and my simple response was, no, I did zero research, because I'm a huge skeptic with this, and I haven't really seen definitive proof yet that the Earth is flat yet. However, somebody gave me sort of a gift. An individual named Brandy Lee added me on Facebook out of the blue. I guess because I follow a lot of the Flat Earth pages on Facebook, somebody added me and has just been, posting very, very, interesting posts all about the Flat Earth Theory. So now we have a few more kind of factoids that we can discuss. The first argument that is put forth by the Flat Earth Society has really showed me something that has changed since when I first learned about the Flat Earth Theory. To elaborate, the theory used to be that Earth is a flat disk, right? Something like a pie pan or something like a record. But the thing is, they said that Earth was, shooting upward into space, not outward, but Earth is specifically shooting upward. The laws of gravity are actually off by 80 times, and that Earth is just, going upward into space. That accounts for the reason why we have, we're able to stay on the Earth, so to speak, and we don't experience what they're talking about. This is completely different. The new Flat Earth Theory actually states that there is no space. One of Brandy's posts was, space is only in your imagination. And I do, honestly, that is what they're saying. I'm not fabricating any of that. The new Flat Earth Theory promotes that there is an actual firmament. It's almost like a dome. And, there's some clips that they have on Brandy's page that show that they've spotted the actual ending point of the dome, the firmament. The Flat Earth Theory, in its newest form, is also saying that we never landed on the moon. One of the reasons for this is the film quality of on the moon with Neil Armstrong is much more granulated, more pixelated. It is so grainy that it's just not sufficient for 1969. For example, we had television in the 1940s, we had television in the 50s, and television in the early 60s that was all higher quality. So there's no possible way they could have filmed a piece of footage that terribly from the moon. Okay, my first response to that would be, well, yeah, but those things that have higher quality footage from the 1940s, were they filmed on the moon, or were they filmed in a studio here on planet Earth? Yeah, I'm going with planet Earth, so, obviously, that was the first time anyone had ever filmed something from the moon. That's why it would look a little bit different. And, one of the things about the firmament, this dome that is on top of the flat Earth and outer space doesn't exist, well, what about airplanes? And definitely we have, are they really trying to say, though, that all those things by NASA are just all completely fake? I guess that's the theory. Yep, that's the theory. It's all completely faked, and the earliest things that I had ever discovered from the Flat Earth Society were really showing about how easy it is to fake those images from outer space. For example, they were able to do it with cardboard, construction paper, and even things like paint, you can make a painting that's quite similar to what the Earth looks like, and they can fabricate the way that NASA photos look, with some black construction paper, cardboard, and oil paints and stuff, and they can even make things that look a lot like the actual photos. But my first response to that was, your painting of the Earth just looks like the Earth, so, well, obviously. Now, NASA plays a very large role in this new Flat Earth Theory model because they actually have, some footage from NASA that was on Brandy's page, which shows that, there's no possible way that the Earth could be round like a ball or a globe, because, we can see very clearly in the NASA footage that it's flat. But the problem is, if you actually can see that the Earth is flat, what about the other films from NASA that people put out there that have a curve? And, the curvature of the Earth can be seen from, in the NASA footage as well. And some people actually made a specific video for that, especially to debunk the flat Earth theory. The next point is, if you have footage from NASA that shows that the Earth is flat, where is the existing footage that shows the edge of the Earth, that shows the edge near the firmament? I mean, like, if we can get high enough in the sky where we can take footage from outer space, and the video that was filmed on Brandy's page came from a high altitude balloon. Okay, well, if you can get that, why can't you film something from the edge of the firmament? Is this dome just preventing balloons from getting close enough to the edge? I'm not 100% sure about that, but if you can film things from outer space, why can't you film the edge of the Earth? Or you could get, something definitive that there is this dome, this firmament that is blocking us in. I mean, all you'd have to do is just tilt a camera upward, and, obviously, where is all that stuff? Now, one of the more blatant points that is put forward by the Flat Earth Society, and this has been said by all variants of the Flat Earth theory that I've ever heard discuss this point, is if you were to watch a ship sail outward toward the horizon, that it will never go over any sort of curvature. And it's like, Brandy, once again, had some photos on her page about, you have Chicago, and, like, no matter how far away you are into Lake Michigan, you can always see Chicago, like, at the same sort of level. The level never changes. No matter how far you get out, you could always, look through a telescope and you'll see the city. Well, it's like at a completely flat line. You can make a line that is parallel from your telescope to Chicago. There is no curve there. And also, they were saying that if you were to put this out on the ocean, that you would have, like, you could always be able to see your land from the distance of your boat. Like, you can always see it. I mean, like, you just need a strong telescope. Now, this is one that is quite different, because if you were to do something like that, all that really means is that there is a very large distance when you can still see land from your boat. I mean, from a certain distance, you can't. I mean, the center of the Atlantic Ocean can't really see the beaches of Virginia. So that's just kind of that. And I never once really thought about it as a kid, that the curvature of the Earth would play a role in that, but I'm sure it does. What's more important, though, is just that the human eye can't see that far, telescopes can't see that far, and it's kind of just an arbitrary point, because there's no way anyone can really discuss it anyway, because humans can't see that far. We can't see from Virginia to Portugal with the naked eye. And even if you're sort of halfway in the middle or something, you wouldn't be able to see in either direction. It's just like, I'm very surprised that they would keep using that, but that's one of the consistent things that I've noticed in the Flat Earth theory, that before this massive change. Like, I don't believe that Brandy's Flat Earth theory, that there is this firmament, there's this enclosure, like there's this dome that is sealing in the Earth and outer space doesn't exist. I don't believe that all Flat Earthers think that way, because for years, they were really promoting that, yeah, there's outer space, it's just gravity functions differently than we think. Yeah, there's outer space, it's just the Earth is flat like a disc, and that's just something that's been overlooked. And also, there were also people that were talking about walking on the, thin, narrow edge of the crust of the Earth, like if you were to hold up a dime or something and just to walk on, like, if you can just visualize the very, very narrow ridges on the round part of the dime. Well, if people could walk on that part, it would just be a total barren desert. But as far as I understand, the firmament would prevent all people from doing that, and you wouldn't actually even be able to walk on the underside. Because I asked that to the Flat Earth Society once, like, does the bottom end of your sort of flat Earth receive any sunlight or any sort of light from anything at all? And they just didn't give me a proper response to that. But their true proper response is that, that might not even really exist in any metaphysical sense according to this flat Earth model, because there is a firmament, it's a dome that prevents anything from going in or out. We can get up to outer space apparently in some weather balloons, but we can't get ever to the underside. Outer space is purely an illusion in this particular model. Now, let's get on to a harder piece of evidence that was put forth on Brandy's page, because, well, this is probably the single most scientific thing that they put forward. They were saying that a gas cannot be contained onto a planet, without some sort of natural barrier. The gas cannot, stay in things like water, air, because remember, water's in three forms, right? Solid, liquid, and gas. Water vapor would not be able to stay on the Earth because there's no physical barrier that prevents it from going out into space. And the gas occupies an open space, right? I mean, if you were to let out any sort of gas, even when you're exhaling CO2 into your bedroom, it fills the entire room. And it's like, well, that's what would happen in outer space. All the gas and water vapor would just kind of go outward into the vacuum of space. Now, someone actually replied with this, that a gas will only go into the vacuum of space if there is force to push it outward. I mean, if there's it really requires force to move the gas, like water vapor, out into the vacuum of space. It's not going to happen naturally. But my first thought was, we do have a barrier in between the atmosphere and the vacuum of space. We do have this, right? Because you remember, I'm coming at this, from just my horrendous grade school education. I was a terrible student in the 4th and 5th grade, but this is one of the things that I kind of remember. The atmosphere is not one thing, right? It comes in levels, right? Troposphere, stratosphere, ionosphere, and mesosphere, and exosphere. I'm a bad student because I mixed up that order, right? But we have all those different levels. And really what I understand is the exosphere, exo meaning, it's like exiting and going outward, that is something that is much more open, and we also have a very large gap in between the stratosphere and the ionosphere. The mesosphere is one that contains very little water vapor, because that is sort of like the kind of middle area in between these other levels of the atmosphere, because, in terms of pressure and things like that. And yes, that's why it's called the mesosphere. But yeah, all these different levels of the atmosphere serve as that sort of barrier. And you might not accept that as a physical barrier, but at the same time, if there's no force that is pushing the gas outward into the vacuum of space, that's not going to happen. But we most definitely have barriers in our atmosphere. It's just they're composed a little bit differently, not to mention the extremely strong pull of gravity. I used to think that it was much more plausible back when the flat earthers were talking about how Earth just happens to be a flat disk. It just happens to be a flat geometric shape, as opposed to, or I should say a 2D geometrical shape as opposed to a 3D sphere. Because there was that famous tweet that the Flat Earth Society sent to Elon Musk when he asked them, why isn't there a flat Mars society? And they simply replied, Mr. Musk, unlike Earth, Mars is proven to be round. Meaning that Mars is not flat and they can observe Mars from their telescopes. But the new kind of revolutionary thing of the Flat Earth Society, if you can believe that, is trying to say that the, planets like Mars and Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus and, even the exoplanets, all of that stuff just doesn't exist. There's only the firmament and there's only this encapsulated dome. And that's just all we have. That's all of our existence. And, it's a very interesting metaphysical model. But I guess all of that stuff is an illusion, and I don't know if that comes back from some of the older times, when people begin to question what exactly are these balls of light in the sky. But I think that that's actually one of the memes that was posted on Brandy's page when they were saying that these are not planets. If you think you can see Venus in the sky, you cannot. That's just a star. There are no actual planets outside of the firmament. They have an explanation for stars, but to be honest, I kind of forget exactly what it is. I think this stuff's really interesting. It's really, really interesting. It's just like the same thing when you watch Ghost Adventures or Finding Bigfoot. When you come at this from a skeptical perspective, I just think it's an absolutely fascinating experience, and it's an enthralling experience. It's really always, you know, just the creativity that people put into some of these things, and I'm still not 100% convinced that there are a lot of people that genuinely believe the flat earth theory. Based on some of the comments that I've had, from a few things on a few different pages and even Twitter, I would say that I think that some people like to indicate that they believe it. I'm not even sure that this individual, Brandy, actually believes in the flat earth theory. I mean, I really don't know what to say about it. But I'd say it's very entertaining, and I really like hearing these creative arguments that people are putting forward, these creative scientific propositions, because, it's one thing I do kind of like, I think, was as well, is that there's a lot of talk from previous civilizations that they believed the Earth was flat. There's a very famous example that the Greeks did not think the Earth was flat because they were able to calculate it and calculate that it was a sphere. But, of course, not all civilizations thought that way, and there were many examples given apparently in old-time Scandinavia or perhaps in Mesopotamia and even ancient Egypt or something. It's my understanding that ancient Egypt simply believed that all there was Egypt. They didn't believe that any other civilization existed until they had contact from the Greeks and the, I guess what they would call the Easterners, with people from Mesopotamia. Before they had this contact, perhaps during the reigns of Narmer, they actually just thought that the sun came out of the Nile and went back into the Nile at night. And that's like it came up in the morning out of the river and then it went back to the river at night, and just that they thought that that's all there was. So perhaps that would be fit into sort of the flat earth model as well. But when we actually look at some of the sort of the things that people are espousing, I mean, I think it's a very entertaining project. I think it's a very entertaining, creative undertaking. And just to come up with sort of things like this, I mean, I'd say that this one was definitely kind of a more entertaining podcast upload to record, because during the last one we were only talking about one very specific theory, that if Earth were an actual sphere, then the water would fall off. But it was really nice to hear these things that Brandy had posted on her page, and she's sharing to all of us on Facebook, and really sharing all of these kind of things for some entertainment, and that's how I approach these things. Until then, until someone can, quote-unquote, change my mind, I'm going to say that the Earth is a ball.